Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 12th of July, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar. Jumped quite sharply yesterday, taking us to very clearly short-term bullish. We had that heads up against the yen, and so dollar looking strong. Dollar index now pushing higher, and that medium-term picture still looking bullish. Euro weakened on that stronger dollar, so euro is looking bearish now, short and medium term against the dollar. Downside target about 1% the short-term chart, and that 5% target still active. So it does look like we will go lower against the dollar there. Japanese yen, the dollar really strengthening here, making multi-month highs. It's the highest level we've seen since January. So clearly breaking out and bullish on all three time frames, so that dollar strength really dominating there. Looking at sterling, sterling is actually lower against the dollar, and that's all about dollar strength. Against the euro, sterling is actually flat at the moment, so not much change there. And against the Swiss franc, sterling also quite flat. Against the Aussie dollar, sterling sitting at 178.80, has actually improved slightly there on Aussie dollar weakness. Bitcoin sinking lower, so looking bearish on all three time frames now, and that target of 5,100 very much in train now. We've got multiple targets to that area. Taking a look at US stocks, the market opened down quite sharply yesterday, but recovered significantly on that ground. So we did actually see that the position improve, and the Nasdaq was a real driver there, closing only down 0.5% in the end, so looking pretty good. Looking at the Dow Jones also uh, was down quite sharply yesterday, in fact, so we are just hitting some resistance here on the short-term chart. Markets really just haven't performed at all this year, and just struggling since that January high. The Russell 2000 was also down as well. The futures this morning are up about a third of a percent on the S&P future, and the Nasdaq E-mini is up 0.4%. So it does suggest that the markets in the US will open higher and recover most of yesterday's lost ground. FTSE's up a quarter of a percent this morning, has dropped away um, quite sharply, but at least it's up. Yesterday was quite a day, down over 1%, and the FTSE 250 also recovering a little bit this morning. Mid caps in the UK still not looking that great. The DAX is actually up a quarter of a percent as well. Just really the European market showing relief on the US, not falling as much as expected yesterday, and the CAC 40 is also looking relatively strong, up 0.2% as well. In Asia, we saw overnight Tokyo was up nearly 0.5%, but still looking bearish on the medium and short-term time frames. And the Hang Seng trying to recover some lost ground, up 0.75%, but still looking pretty bearish medium term. And China, which has been our big worry, of course, was up actually 2%, so a big relief rally there in Shanghai, but still the picture is pretty grim for all time frames there. The Sensex in India actually was up quite sharply, up over 1% overnight, so looking quite strong in the Indian market. And taking a look at the All Ordinaries in Sydney, looking pretty strong there on all three time frames. Brent crude, it fell quite sharply yesterday, down to $73 at one point, was $79 the day before, so really big moves to the downside. And we have actually seen a bit of a relief rally this morning, which is clearly bearish on the short-term chart. The medium-term and long-term pictures are still quite bullish for crude. We are heading into the summer driving season, though, of course, and crude oil generally tends to perform worse in the second half of the year. WTI fell away sharply as well, hitting $70 at one point, so we are just seeing quite a sell-off there in crude oil. US nat gas sitting at $2.82. No big changes here. In fact, it's still pretty bearish in the short term and just struggling. That $3 level is just a push too far. Heating oil also fell quite sharply on the back of crude oil fall away, so looking bearish there in the short term. Looking at some of the soft commodities, coffee continues to look pretty weak, bearish on all three time frames. Cocoa is also looking weak on the medium term charts here. So we're seeing that it's improving somewhat short term, but just struggling on that medium term picture. And if we look at sugar, we see sugar is looking really bearish on all three time frames. So soft commodities generally not looking great at the moment. Gold is back to bearish below the cloud, sitting at $1,245, just really struggling to make any headway. And we are entering territory where we should see a summer rally in gold, but not yet happening. The long-term chart still looks pretty bullish with upside targets, but we do have now short-term targets to 12.18, 12.20. So it does look like gold could go lower, and that stronger dollar not helping. Silver also looking quite bearish as well. US Treasury yields on the 10-year sitting at 2.86%. So it's still looking bullish in the short term. The medium-term picture just deteriorating slightly, but we still have the long-term picture of yields in the high 3% area. So at the moment, we're just a little bit in the doldrums. Taking a look at the US tech majors, we saw that Apple was down 1.3% overnight. Amazon, which has been a strong performer over the last year, still looking pretty strong, was actually up 2/3%. Google, which has actually had relatively weak performance, was only up 0.1%, so really lagging there. And Facebook holding that $200 mark at 202.54 at the close, and looking still bullish on all three time frames, having made new all-time highs above that $200 mark. And Microsoft holding on to the $100 level, sitting at 101.98, just a smidgen below $102. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.